Into your hands I commend my spirit, for you have redeemed me, O Lord, O God of truth. In the name of the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. These words are from the psalm that we heard this morning. And we may not often think of psalms as resources for our daily living. But Old Testament professor Walter Brueggemann says of this psalm that it offers an understanding of time that can be very beneficial to us in these days. He writes, most of us are unthinkingly committed to a certain understanding of time that we might call Promethean. That is, we've come to regard time as something to fill, something to master, to control and plan out with an aim of achievement or accomplishment, success, and perhaps money-making. And when we live in Promethean time, sheltering under house arrest is enormously frustrating because sheltering resists most of our Promethean agenda. We become restless, unable to enter into restorative rest. Brueggemann sees in the psalm that we read a moment ago, an understanding of time as covenant-oriented rather than Promethean. He says that at the center of covenantal time is Sabbath rest, towards which our entire week moves. I think that's such an interesting way to think of the Sabbath as the week progresses there. It is the highlight of the week. And nowadays, he says, we're noticing Sabbath rest all around us throughout the week. Rest from pollution, rest from highway accidents, and even from illnesses that are passed around at school. At least that's the way it's been recently. For Brueggemann, some of the markers, and I would actually call these potentials or possibilities, some of the markers for covenantal time are freedom from the burden and insatiable need to perform and produce, a confident peaceableness, which is an antidote for anxiety, an ability to care for others as we are not so preoccupied with our own performance. And finally, he says that covenantal time offers fidelity. And by that, he means what is said in the last verse of the psalm, let your face shine upon your servant, save me in your steadfast love. We're saved not so much by what we produce, we're saved not by our anxieties, but by God's steadfast love. And that's hard for us. It's hard for us as Americans to deal with that. In our society, we tend to have difficulty with covenantal time. In fact, some have been outraged with requirements to shelter in place. In part, that's because of the anxieties over lost income, the inability to work and to make a living. And that's very understandable. However, our unease with Sabbath time is not just about lost wages. To measure time by covenant rather than accomplishment seems to some to take away independence, to take away self-reliance. The notion of living in relationship, living in covenant, is to some absolutely horrifying. The idea that limitations could be put on my activities for the benefit of the community is unthinkable. Even with the knowledge that sheltering in place and following social guidelines can make things safer for everyone, still there is resistance. And this fierce desire for independence, for no accountability to anyone, flies in the face of today's gospel reading. Jesus is presented as the way, the truth, and the life, the very embodiment of all that is good, of all that is of God. Both the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures bear witness to living in covenant. Love of God and love of neighbor are central. This, above everything, is what Jesus lived and what Jesus taught. And the truth is we really can't love without being in covenant. In covenant time, in covenantal time, relationships matter. For example, in holy baptism, we are named as persons and not simply data. In the baptismal covenant, we're less likely to objectify people, less likely to stereotype others, and less likely to let prejudice define our neighbor or even the stranger. We are in relationship, in covenant with one another and with God. And no matter how hard we try to deny that, we are accountable to one another and to God. So all in all, this may be a good time for us to do some soul work, a time to discover the value of not only doing, but the value of not doing. A time to rediscover and to reaffirm that love really matters. I've been so struck by our neighbors who in this time, they're very busy people. They're both assistant district attorneys and live a very busy life with their children. And yet in this time, they've reached out to us in so many ways, even brought us baked bread. Rediscovering that love is at the root of our covenant is so important. And this is a time we can do that. And it's a time to find that grace abides in ways that we never expected. Even to discover more of what the psalm means when it says, "Into your hands I commend my spirit, for you have redeemed me. You have redeemed me, O Lord, O God of truth." We have a lot to learn, a lot to discover about the love of God. And as the saying goes, there's no time like the present. Brueggemann ends his article by saying, the trick will be to continue giving attention to covenantal time when we're no longer in shelter. At our best, he says, we may slow our motors down to a pace of gratitude. And to that, we say, Amen and Amen.